visiting artist conversation. We're absolutely thrilled to have Squeak Carnwath with us. She has been at Tandem now for about
12 weeks.
9 days, I think. And she'll be leaving this Friday. And for those of you who don't know, Tandem Press is open to the public, so you can come at any stage. And I'm sure that when you see the work tonight, you will be intrigued as we are. It's been a wonderful collaboration with our master printers, and we're very honored to have Squeak visiting from California. This event is sponsored by the Anonymous Fund, and we're most grateful to them for their funding. The way we're going to do this afternoon is it's very informal, and I have a series of questions that actually Squeak has given me.
That I did not write. I'll explain that later.
But it's, which will be very helpful. But please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have a question, especially if you might have a better question. And so I just, I know that we've sent you all notices, so you all know about Squeak's very illustrious background. But I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to her work, and maybe we could start some of the images which she wanted us to run continuously in the background. And the other thing is that she has brought slides, a small number of slides of her latest work, if anybody would like to see that. So if someone Okay, so maybe we'll run those slides as well. We will run the slides. So Squeak Carnwath utilizes both metaphor and depiction to express her consciousness of a life in its primary forms. Acting as a contemporary alchemist, she, through her artwork, transforms objects and events of the everyday into symbols of the universal and the spiritual. Her process is that of both scientist and poet-scribe, experiencing, observing, absorbing, and then recording her work, often in great detail, the process of examination and the expression of experience, involving both the tangible and intangible realities that alchemy suggests. Her paintings, drawings, and prints, and sculptured objects are formed with a private vocabulary of routine images, one that suggests the eminently familiar while maintaining the detachment of indicators and clues. The subject of her work are the simple intimacies and subtle intricacies of life. Modest objects portend significance, the interrelationships of humans and other living beings, emotions and perceptions, and the element of time itself. In its exploration, her work emphasizes the way our lives are organized in and about daily minutiae that tend to echo a broader envisioning of space and time. The particular and the generalized, the personal and the universal are equal in importance in her work. This coming to terms with the ineffability of life, making peace with organic rhythm through a measuring and counting of life's infinite parts, can be placed within the context of the work of other 20th century artists, whose philosophical approaches are linked with hers. Abstractionists like Mondrian and Agnes Martin use essentially non-objective expression to depict and recreate their unique perceptions of a universal order. In similar ways, the geometry and repetition in her work function to emulate a patterning in nature from the grand celestial systems to the most intimate ones, such as a beating heart. Representations of the ordinary that persist as themes in her work are also part of a historical interior continuum in the manner of the French painters Pierre Bonnard and Edouard Vuillard, for example, who honored home life in their exquisite paintings of routine activities. Her work also contains an intellectual affinity with certain conceptual artists who, in the tradition of Marcel Duchamp, elevate a quotidian object or action to the realm of art by the decision of consciously observing and isolating it. In this sense, her practice of listing and naming items, conditions, and experiences distinguishes them as outside of the regular and imbues them with a meaning we then decode through our own personal associations. In her number writing, as well as in the metering out of letters into ultimate words and messages, she shares her understanding of time by revealing it directly. The systems of marking time echo the progression that her overview of life engenders, the moments to make, mark, and then read a symbol, for example, a number, a letter, a word, an icon, into the commemoration of the varied rhythms of lives lived in time. The simplicity of her vernacular belies a more typical idea of mysteries as unfathomable. In the confrontational directness of her work, she offers a depiction of the process of her self-education and re-education, tracking challenges both in life and in paint. She has a willingness to review the discourse, whether allegorical or actual, until she makes it right with herself, using repetitive emphasis as a tool claiming the information of her own, as her own. The surfaces in her paintings reflect this careful working and reworking, this sensuous attention to the matter of things. While they may appear flat at first viewing, with each time, each work reveals an intricacy of texture, stroke, and tone. No color is true or solid. Seemingly large monochromatic areas are either composed of an array of commingled colors, or as is often the case with black, a layering of different consistencies of the same or similar paints. The lines and textures of each work are employed as yet another way to indicate the place of contact, the marking of a moment with a line, the vibrancy of the process of touching, caught, and recorded. Ultimately, a unique combination of clarity and mysterious beauty constitutes the substance of her artwork. Throughout her work, she portrays a confluence of form, gesture, symbol, and diaristic revelation in the essence of her mark. And this is taken from the introduction of a book that was written on Squeak, written by Leah Levy, and this particular piece is called Transformations. So to start the ball rolling, and now that you've seen some of the work behind us, the slides will come up on this side, and that will be the most recent work, just so you know that.
That'll be at the end.
That'll be at the end.
It's the dessert.
I'm just going to ask a couple of questions, and as I said at the beginning, please don't hesitate to jump in with any of your own.
I have a question. Do you guys want these lights down a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine with me. I prefer the dark. Oh, but can you see?
I will.
Okay.
Hope that there's a light somewhere.
I want to experiment, if that's all right.
That's great.
Oh, that's nice.
Wait.
That's
No, she needs a little more
a
light.
little more for me. Well,
There.
the first question is, can you talk about how the everyday plays into your work and what you mean by the everyday?
By the everyday, I mean anything that occurs to me. And what I try to do is give myself permission to follow not knowing at all what I'm doing, to maybe having confidence about a mark or a color or something like that. But generally, I like to just be. And when I'm by myself, I mean, we have printers, some printers here, and that's a whole different way of working because then I'm working with people kind of around, and I actually like to be by myself and not have anybody around. So that I can, because I think that art making is a really intimate act, and I think it's hard to do it in a public setting, and so it's hard to be as permissive as you might like to be. I sort of digress, but I mean, I'll do something like if I have to go to the grocery store, I will write a list of what I have to do and put it in the painting and then cover it over, mainly because in the beginning when I'm starting, I really want to not know what I'm doing. I want to just respond in the moment as things occur to me or don't occur to me, and to notice what doesn't occur to me as well as what does, and put that in the canvas and build them up that way. And I think that I think that painting is the queen of the arts, and there is no king, there's only the queen, and that it's a philosophical enterprise, and that it is a way of working or a way of making a human document that is about thinking and being, and that the paint telegraphs that information. So my version, I guess, of every day is the way in which paint falls on the canvas, touches the canvas, is pushed on the canvas, the way the image is manipulated or not manipulated, the things that occur to me as I'm thinking that I put in the canvases. And so it's a sort of a practiced, I guess, witnessing of who I am. Yeah, that's my answer.
I'm going to cast my eye about every so often, so if somebody wants to raise their hand, I'll take that question in addition to.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. Okay, so do you do any drawings as preliminary?
I do no
paint, or
drawings.
just directly paint?
I paint directly. I used to do some preliminary drawings that were really rudimentary, and now what I do, and I let me just say that I started painting when I was in 5th grade, so whatever age that is, in oil paints, and I would take oil painting classes and ride my bike. It was in Marblehead, Massachusetts. And I'd ride my bike at night with a dog and take these classes with adults. And mainly it had like a paint supply store attached to it. And paint was a lot cheaper then, and they were in littler tubes and stuff. And so I could just pick out colors, and my father would pay for them along with the lessons. And so I became very skillful at manipulating paint. And I think like a habitual skillfulness. What do you call it? There's a word for that. Well, if you guys think of it, yell it out. But so I gave up painting for a number of years because I felt like I was just kind of, it was too habitual. I didn't have enough, there wasn't, for me I call it fear, but there wasn't enough fear involved so that I didn't know where I was going. I knew too much in advance, even though I didn't plan out completely. There was just too much knowing in advance. So I gave up painting and started building things out of clay and doing some drawings of those constructions, which were like fallen paintings on the floor. And if you get bored, just say, okay, shut up, I'm tired of that answer. In any case, and that gave me what I call like a cellular memory of what I think form is, which may or may not coincide with anybody else's idea of form. And when I built those things, I then let myself have a reward of like painting on paper, and that soon went back to canvas. And my reward was that I got to paint, but that I had this idea, I had this kinesthetic or physical response to the forms that I built, and so I knew kind of I could paint them in a more felt way, according to me. None of them are in here either, because and then I would do quick little sketches after that, after I went back into painting and stopped building stuff, because I'm not a sculptor, and sculpture is like a chair, you bump into it as far as I'm concerned. So it's really there, and painting is not really there, and that's what I like about it, because I think that is really exciting. I think that is philosophy, so I'm very interested in that. And so then I stopped doing any drawings at all and just go to blank canvases, and I clear out my studio. I have sort of 2 rooms. One's a clean room where I can hang stuff that gets finished, and one's a working room. And I like emptying out the room of anything and starting out like in a complete blank place. And when I start a new group of work, and although now they're kind of blending together, I don't know whether that's getting old or what that is. But I like to not know what I'm doing and just trust that I will figure it out. The other thing is, I think that painting and art making in general is all about trust. It's that you trust that you're going to be the person you're going to be, the best person you can be, because you're kind of developing a self. And that's what I think. I mean, I think aside from painting being the queen of the arts, I do think that all art making is about creating a self and a record of that. Yeah.
I was just wondering, the often use of text in your work, if you ever feel like overwhelmed with painting itself, if you ever...
If I did, I wouldn't put it in, but
well,
yeah.
Sometimes there are a lot of people who are thrown off by text and often not being told what you're supposed to think about the painting or what's supposed to be your idea of what the painting is. And I wonder,
You mean the text
the
that
text in itself, it
tells somebody who...
you feel it overwhelms the painting, overwhelms yourself, it overwhelms you also.
Because I don't use words to, I mean, for me, they're not descriptive and they're not explanatory. They're sort of, if you have a square of something, they're sort of off the corner in some way. They're not really, and they, in the way that language is elastic and changes with time, for me, they have that elasticity that they don't really accurately describe what the image is. And the other thing is that there's a timing element about looking at a painting and how you slow your eye down or how you go through a painting. And for me, it's also about, like, each letter is one thing, kind of like ticking off, and then that makes a word, and then that word makes two words, and those words make a phrase that might make a sentence, it might not. And the newer work is more, probably more overtly diaristic or scrawly, like notebooky kind of musings. And I love Persian, and Persian miniatures, and the way Farsi looks written, or like language that I can't read, because I love the handwriting, and I like how the handwriting is sort of how an artist can lean into the work in some way that's different than an image. It's kind of like a thumbprint in some kind of weird way. And my handwriting, I never learned how to do proper cursive. And when my mother was dying, I would go see her every day, and I was in a residency at Yaddo in Saratoga Springs, New York, and she lived near there. And I would go see her, I'd come from the studio, go see her, and one day I showed up and she said, "Oh, your brother Chip was here." And I said, "Yes." And she said, he wrote letters for me. And I said, "Well, I could write letters for you," to her friends to say goodbye. And she said, "Oh no, your handwriting's way too messy." Anyhow, so, but I like it. It's like a Son of Sam scrawl, and I don't know, I'm attached to it. You had a question over there? No? You're just scratching? Okay.
Well, talking about writing and your other work, can you talk a little about how you make the personal political, or some of the universal?
Can I do that? I don't know. That's kind of let me just explain. Neither of us wrote these questions. These are questions by a guy named Dan Younger, who is a gallery director. What school is in Gambier, Ohio? Can anybody remember? It's Kenyon, thank you. I've been trying to remember that for days now. Okay, at Kenyon, where I had a show. And let's just skip that one.
Okay. Okay, so I give myself a D on that.
No, you can't. We're innocent. We didn't write these questions.
Isn't this great? Okay, so well, you talked about going to the supermarket. So the next question maybe might be one.
Okay.
How does the mundane inform the work? In fact, you could even talk about the great print that you're doing, because I think the monkeys.
Oh yeah, the monkeys.
Which is one of my favorite new print.
Well, see, I love TV, and I especially love dumb TV. I adore TV. I have a TV in my studio, and I like public radio as well, and I like to have them both on at the same time. Oprah on one channel, although I think she's getting a little, I don't know. So we're moving to somebody else. Anyhow, I really like dumb TV, and I like the kinds of ways it illuminates who we are. I can't describe I guess I haven't labeled what way, but in any case, so the mundane for me is whatever occurs to us, wherever our thoughts take us. But I really like things. I like the things that we don't pay attention to so much, like TV. You know, art's supposed to be only intellectual and not have any, never touches down kind of with popular culture or with something as anti-intellectual as TV and stuff. And but I don't know how I'm gonna. I think I've worked myself into like a circle here. I like how they kind of intersect, and that really in the mundane may be the more profound, not necessarily within popular culture, but maybe some element of it. And that if we just kind of pay attention to like everything that occurs to us in our head, we might go a little wacky. But that's. I guess I'm not answering that very well.
No, that's fine.
That's it.
You all have to come and see these prints because...
I can talk about the monkeys.
Yeah, let's talk about the monkeys.
Okay, you know, because this really bothers me. Like how unrespected or disrespected art and art making is. And there was I think it was Bonham Butterfields, but I'm not sure. They had an auction, and they auctioned off a painting, an abstract painting by a monkey. And this was a painting that was given to Picasso, so that may have had something to do with it. But I don't think so, because they had some other ones that weren't Picasso's, I believe, but were by the same monkey. And these paintings went for $25,000 a piece. And then, and the monkey has since deceased. It's a monkey that lived in the 60s, so maybe, you know, it's like estates, and that the value goes up after the artist dies. But then the other thing is that on David Letterman, has anyone seen this thing? He has this, is it a man, a monkey, or an elephant now? Now they've got the elephants. And they put a painting on an easel, and David Letterman asked his sidekick, Paul, who's the musical director, is it by an elephant, or is it by a monkey, or is it by an artist? You know, an artist isn't even a human anymore. It's just it's a subspecies. You know, it's like with the monkeys and the elephants and the artist. And so far, there has never been an artist. It's always been by a monkey, and recently an elephant. And I just think it's, you know, that it's just indicative of how the whole culture feels about art and artists. So that's in the print. Maybe that's how the personal becomes the political.
Well, it's very, I mean, it's very depressing because I think it's very
discouraging.
telling that I remember somebody saying an artist should never go on a talk show because ultimately people will never, you know, really respect the answers. So,
and maybe that's what we're barking up on this tree. You never know. Did you guys ever? You're all too young, but you know, there was this late night TV guy, Johnny Carson, and he had Alice Neal on one. Did anybody ever see that? It was sort of awful and pathetic. I can't even remember, but he brought out a picture and tried to get her to talk, and he had a few puffs off his cigarette. It was awful. Anyhow. Oh, but David Letterman has Martin Mull on. But Martin Mull's an extrovert, and he gets up there and talks, and he says, and go to the blah, blah, blah gallery and see my show. And you know what that is? That's like to an audience of how many millions are watching David Letterman. But, you know, he's a TV star in his own right. Okay, there you go.
Well, we have lots of painters in the audience, so I'm going to let some of the painters come up with some specific questions on painting for you. But I'm going to just ask you about, you've spent the last 9 days at Tandem, and you've been working with printmakers, and you began this talk by saying that, you know, you work in your studio and you come in, but when you come to Tandem, it's a very collaborative process.
It is.
And can you just talk about what that's like as someone who primarily works alone, and then what it does when you come into the studio?
And now they'll have to be nice to me for the next 2 days. So what you do is you come in and you go, oh my God, they're sick to death that they have to work with this artist. This is what's going on in my mind. And I'm going, oh my God, I've got to think of something to say because otherwise they're not going to want to print it. They're not going to want to ink it up. Oh, that awful color? So these are things that go through my, and you don't have, there's no like little parrot on your shoulder when you're in your studio, like judging stuff. And I'm not saying these guys are judgmental at all. They surely wouldn't be. But because I'm used to working alone, I just think they must, because I would be probably. So it's really hard, and I like to not know what I'm doing, but to have witnesses to that sort of basic stupidity is really hard. It's hard to have everybody know. You know how you feel like you're a fraud maybe sometimes? Well, that's okay if you think to yourself, well, they're going to figure it out, I'm a fraud. But to go someplace where that actually might happen, where it actually truly might be revealed, that's a little harder. So I try to kid them and get them to do stuff and make a lot of proofs, and I ask them questions, and they actually are really helpful, and they have good ideas, and they do know what they're doing because I only know because I go to a place and the printmakers, the master printmakers, actually know all the tricks or all the methods and know how to make something. If I have an idea or how I want an image to look, they know how to make that happen. So they're very helpful, and they've been working on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, last night till 10 o'clock. They're very dedicated. Now, there were some missing students who, do I see any of them here? Who were supposed to be there on the weekend, and these guys gave up their family time. They all have little kids, and if you saw the news like I did, there was like a walk for literacy that they could have been at with their kids. There was apparently apple picking and pony riding. They could have been in their own studios. And these students had promised that they would be there to help them. So if any of you are here, I hope you feel guilty.
Well, now you all know that's.
I'll be there tomorrow.
I hope so, because we've only got 2 more days. We have some big chores.
Now you all know that Squeak is also a professor at Berkeley, so she's used to grading. But,
but I don't believe in grades either. I believe that you make your own way in the world. So if you get a halfway decent grade, but you don't work very hard, it's your problem.
Do you find that teaching takes away a lot of your energy from your own work?
Sometimes it does, and I think I'm not a very good teacher. I think I was a better teacher as a younger person, because I would, when I first started teaching, I would really, 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 maybe I worked a little too hard on trying to get people to do their work and stuff. And I would, I think the first day of teaching, I came back after an 8-hour day, and I went to my studio going, oh, I can go to my studio now. I sat down in the chair and I was asleep. Because you're not just thinking about your own work, you're thinking about everybody else's work. And I don't give projects where everything looks the same, because I find that boring. But it would be easier if I did that. Like if we did, I've never done one of those, and please forgive me if you have, but I'm not this kind of person. One of those things where you grid off a great big picture and everybody does a thumbprint section of it, and then they put it all together and it's a great big huge head of George Bush or something like that, and they hang it on the side of the building. I've never done one of those with my students, because I can't draw, I don't draw that much. And I try to get people to do what it would be in their heart, or in their own true self, whatever, as close as they could get to that. And I try to build courage and have them take risks and fail and do stuff that they don't know what they're doing, just so that they can get to a place where they build their confidence, and they'll try anything. And I teach some skill things, but it's more because I think that people will learn skills when they need it for a certain look or something. They'll know that they want something to be this way, and they'll realize they either have to slow down, spend more time, they have to look more carefully, or learn how to, mix certain paints or whatever. But so, and now what in terms of, does it take more time? I probably am not thinking as hard about everybody's work as I used to when I was younger, and that's why I say I'm probably not as good a teacher. And I am and since I left Davis, I used to teach at Davis for 15 years, and the politics got, I thought, not worth driving an hour and 10 minutes for. And so I transferred to Berkeley, and I can ride my bike to Berkeley, which is much nicer. And I go, it's a job. I go there and I come back, and I do my service part and my teaching part, and the research I feel is the most important, which is being in the studio, and I do my committee work, and I treat it as a job. So I'm better at managing my time. And if I'm not managing my time, I keep a time clock. I put up a little thing in my studio, like how many hours or minutes I've been in my studio, and if I see that it's too little, then I just keep adding, it makes me just add it on, so then I manage to get like the right amount of time. I'm very disciplined.
What would you advise young people who are here today in terms of,
Go
working?
to your studios.
Go to,
Yeah.
every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And while you're in grad school, you should really, really, really get in like 8-hour days at least. Make sure you do that. Even if you have seminars, doesn't matter. You've got enough time, 4 hours here, 4 hours there. Do it late at night, do it early in the morning. Keep a time clock, get in the habit. And then pretty soon when you get out of grad school, you've built in this discipline so that every time you pick up, however you work, if you're a sculptor or a painter, but every time you pick up that tool or start working on that tool, you just like are in the zone. You just are like when I give a demonstration, I thought that I could give demonstrations, which I do, but I can't talk and give a demonstration. Because as soon as I start painting, I'm like, like painting. It's like I'm by myself. So I think that people need to build it into their body, and you only do that through practice. And the other thing is that other things count in your studio. Reading art magazines counts. It does. Reading philosophy counts. Reading essays about art counts. Going to shows counts. Going to museums counts. Thinking about art counts. And if you have a job, like when I had a job right out of grad school, I would go and I'd take a Polaroid of my piece that I was working on, or two. I work on more than one at once, so I'd take a bunch of Polaroids. And I had this great job where I mixed glazes and fired kilns, and I had this little toolbox that had clay tools in it. And they gave me a desk, and up against this toolbox, I propped up these Polaroids of the paintings I was working on. And so I'd think about them all the time. And when I drove to Davis, I would tack them onto my dashboard, and so I'd be thinking about them, and sometimes I'd draw on them. And so that when I went to the studio, I was already like primed and ready to like work on it. It wasn't like a foreign object, it was something I'd lived with. So I would say do that too. I know these are kind of dumb ideas, but the more, but I'm all for dumb ideas that keep you in the studio. Oh, you know what? Did I answer your question? I do have a question answer about drawing. Okay, so I don't draw anymore. So now what I do is I keep notes next to all the paintings. And I write down what I forget, or what I want to do next, or color swatches, so that's all. I just keep a diary next to each painting. And I call that drawing. Yeah.
What is the title Einstein's brain Kansas referred to?
Oh, that's a great story. William Burroughs lived in Lawrence, Kansas, and he made a film about Einstein's brain, and it was shown on the BBC. And there was this guy who worked in the hospital in New York where Einstein's body went after he died, and they kept the brain to figure out, like what genius is, what it actually entails. And this is before genome sequencing and all that stuff. And the doctor, the head pathologist who had the charge of the brain, got a divorce, left that hospital, had some kind of breakdown or something, and ended up in Lawrence, Kansas, with the brain in formaldehyde in a clear cookie jar, like in a glass jar, on his kitchen counter. And he stopped being a doctor and I saw this movie, so that's how I can know the story. It may not be true, it could be all acting, and he had a job in a vacuum forming factory. And there was this Japanese physicist in the movie who was on this quest looking for Einstein's brain because he wanted a piece of it because he was a physicist and he thought maybe it would, was like the Holy Grail. It held some kind of magic power or whatever. And so he went from Princeton to New York to all these different places where there might be some slide or piece of Einstein's brain, and he ended up in Kansas and at the doctor's kitchen table slicing off a piece of this formaldehyde brain and taking it home with him, his trophy. So that was like an everyday thing that occurred in a painting.
In one of the prints that you're doing at Tandem, you've used a background of how you perceive stem cells.
Oh, yeah.
And
As a pattern.
So there are scientific link-ups between, how do you see the link between art and science?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
But I think that they're similar in that they're about curiosity and thinking about how things work and about primary research. Because I think that art making is a form of primary research, and by that I mean that it's trying to figure out what it is to be human, or what it is to occupy this space at this time, at this moment, and we're creating human documents, and science is, maybe more directed, but it's still a human document that leads to some other aspect of being human. So, and understanding what it's about understanding being here, whatever that is. And I like the things that happen, and so I like when they have that there's so much technology that can visualize things that we can't see, and that they're really beautiful things to look at. Like stem cells are really kind of fabulous to look at. And this could be a good thing for scarves.
You have to explain that.
I suggested that Tandem start making scarves and placemats, and because they have this new computer-driven printer, which can print on paper, on silk, on all these different things, and you can print anything. So you can download anything and scan it into a computer, then you can print it. You can drawings, anything. It's great. So.
You heard it here first. I'm bringing Squeak to the next budget meeting with the dean, and this will resolve all our budgetary issues.
It's going to be the new Hermes of the Midwest.
I'm casting my eye about.
Yes.
Two questions. First one is, can you talk about any relationship that exists consciously in your work with naive and visionary artists, folk artists, outsider artists, and children, art of children? And secondly, second question has to do with the nature of the text, quality of the writing in the text. I mean, you refer to it as stamp
Scroll.
scrawl. And I'm really curious as to whether that's a genuine.
Oh, whether it's a faux naive
Well,
or faux
I'm
something.
wondering whether you're constructing a dramatic presence
Oh,
in
by
the
doing
work
that?
through the quality of the writing. The size, the nature of misspellings, the uncorrect.
I try not to misspell. I'm actually a pretty good speller. But sometimes I find that I have left off a letter, in particular in printmaking because I'm writing backwards. But I'm going to answer the second question first and then get back to the other thing. That is the way I write pretty much. More so now in the newer paintings than in other paintings, in earlier paintings where I probably emphasize something, one thing or another. But I have a painting, I don't know if it's gone by or anything, that's my writing there, the Psych 101. I have a painting where I got mad at my husband because he would come in every 4 minutes with a, why didn't you answer your phone? I answered it for you. And then he'd give me the message and I go like, I like to use the F word. I think it's a fabulous word. Why are you effing bothering me? And get out of here, get the F out here. And I don't want to answer the damn phone. If I wanted to answer the phone, I'd answer it. It's in the studio, I'd answer it. I let it ring. So, and it was just ringing, ringing, ringing. You know, it was telemarketers and people wanting stuff, nobody giving away any money or anything. And I just wrote on this painting, shut up, in huge letters, like screaming. And the reason that was big was because I wanted to scream, shut up, shut up. So I also, in terms of the language, I mean, sometimes I don't put that many words in something. I think I have a print that's not going to have any words in it. But I also think in language primarily. I don't think image first. I think linguistically more. When I think kind of in sentences, and then that might be tied to something more inchoate. That's like just that I can't name. That ends up being an image or a color or a texture or something like that. Is it truthful? Fuck if I know. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not sure, I don't know. I'd be willing to question that, but I'm not trying to be fake. So, and the words are important to me. And I've done paintings that are all words. I've done paintings that say, there's one that's a painting that's, it's a big painting, like 80 by 80, and most of the paintings are fairly large like that. And it just says, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, all over it. And it ends up with this kind of slit in it that's like a wound that's not intended, that ended up because I can't write in a straight line. And it really just looks like stripes. But I love this painting. It's like a favorite of mine, and it's like written like that. It took months to do. So I don't know. I'm in the process of finding that out. As for outsider stuff, I love outsider stuff. I am an autodidact. Even though I went to art school, no one taught me painting. I started learning, I started painting young, but I learned more about painting by looking at it and by making pilgrimages to various paintings and getting this far away. And I feel like I paint like Rembrandt. I feel like I've studied Rembrandt's painting and that's the quality that my paint has. Now that sounds wacky, but that's, I think that I've looked close enough and invented, it's not painting like Rembrandt, but I feel that they have this similar kind of disrupting and moving the surface around, and that it's that pain is a stand-in for the skin and the body, and that in an abstract, well, I don't like the word abstract, but in a maybe in a more literal way, this is like a swatch of skin as opposed to being a figure, and a whole figure. And the other thing about the naivety thing, I think I'm just immature. So, that's, yeah.
This slide shows more or less chronological, right?
Yeah, these are earlier, like in the, I don't know when you start. Unfortunately, I'm really bad at dates and don't have a good sense of time. But I think they're like the 80s, up until,
But the whole slideshow is chronological.
yeah, and I think it goes to the 90s.
Many of your slides have a definite line of contrast.
Like the top-bottom thing?
Well, yeah, and then like this one, it's
Uh-huh.
not necessarily top bottom, but
Yeah.
there's definite blocks, I guess you could say, of a certain color, a certain brightness,
Mhm.
a certain texture. Can you elaborate?
I don't know what that's from, other than it's a way of organizing for me. I think it is tied to like Pennsylvania Dutch, because I grew up in around Pennsylvania and other places, and places that had things on barns or quilts and stuff like that. And it's that plus this organizing principle. I think all artists are control freaks, and it's a way to organize it, and it's a simplistic way to organize it. But for me, I'm kind of it's almost like an autistic way. It's because it's like stamped or experienced, or like it's kind of literal in some way, and that's really important to me because I can control it and I can see the control. So that's part of the reason I do it. Yeah.
I teach a class on professional practices,
Uh-huh.
and I was wondering if you could talk a bit about how you organize and keep track of where your works are and when they're going off to shows, and how you balance that in your studio life, and your professor life, and how much time that takes up, or if you hire someone.
I do. That I do.
Talk about that.
Yeah. I hire somebody who comes once a week. I never let a painting out without a picture. It either gets a 4x5 and slides, or now I use a digital camera instead of a Polaroid. The assistant labels it. Whenever anything goes out, we get a consignment form back from the galleries, but we also create a form that lists everything. So all the slides are kept in notebooks. Each image has a page, so that the slides are all on one page, the black and whites are on another. Oh, excuse me. And the 4x5s are on other, on those divided pages. And there's a sheet that goes in front of those, and that one piece, each piece has a sheet, and I have everything documented. And I do that because, one day I'm going to go to sleep and I'm never going to wake up, and I want to have everything organized. And I don't want to leave somebody with a big mess. And I also like to be able to find things. And so the studio assistant comes in and makes sure that they all go in the notebooks. And how I got into that was I had everything in a paper bag. And I went to somebody who, in hopes that they would like help me market things better or something, that somehow they'd be the answer to my, I don't know, some kind of art prayer. And all they did was organize them and put them in books. And then I took them home, and I kept doing that, and hired somebody who continued to do it, who worked for me for a number of years, and now I have somebody else. And so I have all the last each year has a notebook, and similar to what you guys have over at Tandem. And I think everybody should keep records of their work and document it. And then the other thing is, I think that what makes, in terms of business, just the idea of like how you take care of your work and with galleries and stuff is that we have the real estate. The artist has the real estate. We're the artists. We own the land, which is the painting, which is the artwork. The galleries do not. They are the agents. We control what happens to our work. We take care of it. They do not. They help us. And I love the dealers that I work with. I think they're fabulous. But they did not do half the work. Even though they might get 50%, the artists did all the work. And artists need to take their power and recognize that they are the ones in the driver's seat, that it's not the other way around. And to say no when it doesn't feel right, and to pull the work back when it doesn't feel right, or if somebody is disrespectful to it. And if you don't protect the work, nobody else will, because nobody cares about it in the same way that you do. Even if you're unsure about it, even if you have, everybody has doubts. I like trade in doubt every day. If you don't take care of it, no one else will. So it's your job. You made it. You're responsible.
Can you go a little further, Squeak, and tell people about this foundation that you've set up, which I think is really fascinating?
Yeah. I don't have any kids. And but I have all this work. And Gary and I, my husband, were stupid enough and sort of smart enough simultaneously to buy this big 21,000 square foot building in the middle of now what is a quickly developing waterfront district of downtown Oakland. And we rent spaces to artists at below market. And the building is getting more valuable as time goes on. And we paid what we thought was an extraordinary amount of money, which is now like the price of, you might be able to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom cottage for what we paid. And it was owner financed, which meant that the owner carried the note. And at one time we didn't even have the money for the payment on it. This is a little real estate lesson. And we just went to him and said, we had to make improvements. Can we just put it at the end? He said, sure. And banks don't do that so readily. And so anyhow, now this building is worth something. And I was worried that I needed to set up a way to take care of my work. And so I wanted to set up a foundation which would be the beneficiary of my estate, which would be this building, which is what I see as the really valuable thing, and the work as being, potentially valuable if the legacy is taken care of. And so everybody who I talked to said, "Oh, you can't start a foundation without $1 kajillion," and then this lawyer told me that yes, you could. You don't need $1 kajillion. That he would just trade a painting to set it up. So I set this up, and then I told my friend Viola Fry that I had done this because she didn't have children either, and we both talked about what would happen to all our stuff and our saving. We both save for old age and stuff. And so she said, "Oh, can I be a part of that?" And I said, "Sure." So then it became, rather than being the Squeak Carnwath Gary Connect Foundation, it became, and it was modeled after Pollock Krasner, because Lee Krasner was really smart about doing this. So then it became the Artist Legacy Foundation, and Viola Fry died 1 year and 3 months ago. And her estate is going into the Artist Legacy Foundation, and the Legacy Foundation has hired a director, and that director will sort of preside over helping Viola's work move into the, shepherding it into the future and increasing her the recognition for her work and placing the work and stuff like that, working with the galleries. And it will also give grants to artists, to individual live artists, cash grants. So Viola did me a great favor by leaving it to the Artist Legacy Foundation, what became the Artist Legacy Foundation, because in my lifetime this foundation will get started, and it's a foundation that can also accept other artists' estates, which we kind of plan to do by invitation, and that it could go on forever and forever give grants to artists in the future and preserve the legacy of the artists who leave their estates to the Artist Legacy Foundation. Pretty cool, huh?
Could we see the newest work with the basket? So has anybody else got a question? You'd like to ask?
Go ahead.
I was wondering whether the images in your paintings, do you draw from memory? Are they drawn from memory then?
Memory, tracing, whatever. In fact, I had to, these guys, the print shop, did not have any transfer paper, which is like carbon paper. I had to go out and buy some. First we tried to make some out of some blue dust, and then I had to go out and buy it. So whatever, either tracing, like, you know, Darger used to do that, Richard Prince does that, lots of people do that. Whatever it takes. Give yourself permission to do anything. Yes?
What's your handprint?
Yes. I wear gloves, though, at all times. Yeah.
Does your idea change
Why?
many times during the process?
Yeah.
Because when you end up with an image, they seem so inevitable and so, you know, everything just belongs
Isn't
where
that
it is.
great?
Well, yeah.
It doesn't start out that way. Yeah. It just, it evolves, and I move things around, and I love the history of, like, this being in the wrong place, moving something, something disappearing, not ever being on the outside surface ever. And with the numbers, it's kind of like clocking off moments or time, or just keeping track of something, like stepping on cracks, or when you're walking. And when the writing is backwards, for me, it's like being on the inside of the painting and pushing out, which is what the handprints are like too.
Can you talk about like feeling finished or knowing when done is done?
When it's done? Most of the time it just feels like right. It's the way I want it to be, and I can't say what those properties or qualities are, but it has the right amount of like the paint quality has the right amount of, you see, I can't even say it. It seems like skin, it has the perfect color, or perfect to me color. It has the right luminosity. It's balanced enough, you know. Sometimes I'll leave something on the wall for a really long time because I'm not sure it's done. But I hardly ever go back into a painting. When it's done, it's cooked. And I work on about 10 paintings at a time. So when I get stuck on one painting, I go to the next painting, and I just leave that other one to like be by itself, and then I just do something on something else, and I move around, and then finally one gets like a dog. I'm like a dog on a bone, and I have to just like finish it, and then I finish it, and then there's another one that is that way, and I never leave a painting that I hate. If I hate it, I do something to it, like to claim its territory, because I really want that Joan Didion book about magical thinking, which is a different topic but sort of related. Because I feel like if I leave a painting when I don't like it, when it's like really, I feel like it's really bad, and I don't claim the territory back, that it'll just get worse in my absence. So I always tell students to never go to bed with a painting that they hate. Don't let the painting control you. Control the painting. Because I'm a control freak. And I don't want them to do something overnight by themselves.
Can you talk about this increasing guilt-free zone?
Yeah. The first, I'm putting it in a lot of paintings, and I don't know if I'm going to keep doing it because I have put them in like a whole bunch of paintings. A friend of mine had melanoma, and she didn't do anything about it. and I don't know how long she really had it, but the other friends of ours said, why would she do that? You know, what was she doing? Like it's her life. She can live it how she wants to. And she was never sick with her son, you know, or it was just at the end, and he was 13, which is a terrible time to lose a parent, but it might be harder when they're even younger. And it was what she chose to do with her life, partly out of fear and partly probably to have the kind of time she wanted with her family that she got. And I thought she needed people were almost telling her this when she was dying. And I felt that she needed a guilt-free zone. So it started out as that, and then I went, well, hey, I could use a guilt-free zone because I'm very guilty. So anyhow, so that's where that comes from. This is the difference between photographs and painting. Oh no, this one's about 40 by 60. Those two that are there, those little square ones, are really, I think those are both 60 by 60, which is 5 feet.
Pretty much everything we look at is in that kind of 5 foot.
Yeah. I do little paintings, but I'm hoarding them because I feel like they take the same amount of time, and you know, women don't get the same price as men. Did you know that? And so this is my own private little revolt. And so I feel that the little paintings are too inexpensive and too easy for collectors to get. I'm probably just shooting myself in the foot here. And so I keep them for myself. Even though I have huge storage and huge walls. It's just a kind of, I have an anger streak. Anger is my friend. See, there's that. We made a print similar to this. Yeah.
Who are some of your influences?
Anything, absolutely anything. Oh, wow. There's so many people I really like. Well, let's start like way back. So we'll go Rembrandt, Watteau. Who's the guy that did they're little teeny paintings, and then they have a room in the Louvre that's all pastels. Little bread, cherries, you know, fruit. Oh well, I'll think of it tomorrow in the shower. Courbet, I love Courbet. Duchamp, Susan Rothenberg, Elizabeth Murray, Ryman, Agnes Martin, Bill Traylor, anything. Almost anything. And the Buddhas at the bottom of this are, because I think that painting is a kind of, it's like Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist or anything, but I feel like from the reading that I've done and from the way I feel about painting, I feel that it is, that it's the same, it's a similar practice of being present and mindful and paying attention, and so they're really about painting and not about a specific religion.
What have you been reading?
You know, I just got that Kimmelman book, and what else? And I've been reading Wittgenstein, or Wittgenstein for the people who can really say it. I can't do that, but yeah. Because I love reading him. He's fabulous to read. They're little chunks of nuggets of like observation. They're just great. You should all be reading that. And then the newspaper. Have we gone over our time yet?
We're just on, is that the last slide?
It is the last slide.
Okay.
Well, please join with me in thanking Squeak for a fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you for your questions. This was the first time we did this without real workarounds.